Browns back on the practice field today for OTA number 6, the second practice open to the media. And the big story today, of course, as we've been talking about all week leading up to this, Mary Kay, was Deshaun Watson throwing the football. We finally got to see him throw the football. So, simple question, what did you think?
Well, it was about what I expected it to be. There was good zip on the ball, good velocity on the ball. It went where it was supposed to go. It ended up in the hands of the receivers. He looked very, very good, and in some respects, he looked very much like himself. So I thought that was good. But I think, once again, the key thing to remember here is that he was throwing routes on air, individual routes, and not throwing against a defense, not getting any pressure, not getting the ball knocked out of anybody's hands, and those kinds of things. So we have to temper the enthusiasm a little bit, but the good thing for the Cleveland Browns right now is that their QB1 is out there throwing just after having surgery in November, and that bodes well for the future.
Yeah, Ashley, I feel like I need to just put a big disclaimer at the bottom. Hey, it's May. But, seeing him throw on air, which we had talked about on the podcast, that was probably what we were going to see. You did see a little bit of that. Here's that word, zip. You saw a little bit of that accuracy. You saw some of those things that make Deshaun Watson, at least as much as you can in this setting.
Yeah, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about what the coordinator said a little later, but I thought Ken Dorsey made a good point. There was that one throw today that Deshaun Watson made down the sideline to Elijah Moore. It was a nice vertical throw. Ken made the point to point out that he hadn't seen a throw like that yet from Deshaun through this process. So I do think all those things are positive signs. We did see good zip. We saw those vertical looks, and yeah, he didn't throw during the 11-on-11 or 7-on-7 periods, which is what we expected, but what we did see in those individual drills, I thought, looked good for the time of year that it is and where he's at in his rehab.
Now, Ashley just mentioned a name, a throw that Deshaun made to Elijah Moore, obviously one of the key members of this receiving corps, Mary Kay, and we got a chance to talk to Elijah. You asked him about why he wasn't here last week. We asked him about his contract, and I thought Elijah answered a lot of the questions that we had.
Elijah is a great quote. He's really good. He speaks his mind. He tells it like it is. So I did ask him that he created a little bit of a buzz by not being here last week. People speculated that perhaps he was upset about Jerry Jeudy or not having a new contract yet. And he addressed both of those things. As far as Jerry Jeudy, he said, I'm not afraid of competition. I'm from South Florida. And so he kind of put that whole thing to rest. And then, of course, you asked him about the contract, and he's not worried about the contract. It's not his time yet. I do think that it will be addressed probably sometime during the season. He knows he's going to get paid, and I don't think that will be a distraction.
And look, Ashley, on a day when we saw Jalen Waddle get paid a bunch of money, not that Elijah Moore's going to get paid that much, but as these receivers get paid more and more, that's going to benefit everybody, including Elijah Moore, if he goes out and does what he believes he's capable of doing.
Yeah, we've seen this receiver market really go through booms, I think, in recent years. Obviously, it is a marquee position on the offense, so the way the market goes can benefit a lot of those guys that are maybe more towards the average, I guess, and I think Elijah right now at least would fall in there, but I really liked his answer on that. He brought up that you can't think about that every day because you'll drive yourself crazy. I thought he was pretty thoughtful. It's not often that I think you get guys that honest talking about their contracts. You normally get the canned, I'll let my agents deal with that. I think he was honest that it's hard not to do, right, because it is your future, but he's not allowing himself to go down that path, and I think that's a good thing.
Now, we also got to hear from all three coordinators today. So Ken Dorsey, Bubba Ventrone, Jim Schwartz, Mary Kay. What was a takeaway you had today from one of the coordinators?
Well, Ken Dorsey talked a lot about the fact that he is trying to install an offense when he's got a limited QB1. That can't be easy. Everything's new. Everything's different. The good thing for Deshaun is that he has run this kind of offense before in Houston. But still, it's a little bit challenging to try to do that because you're trying to get timing down with receivers and these new choice routes and things like that. But Ken also pointed out, we've got to get these other guys work. We've got to get the receivers work. So we have to keep spinning it forward while Deshaun is coming along.
Ashley, what kind of stood out to you today?
Well, I'm going to go to Jim Schwartz. I don't know about you guys. I feel like we could have had Jim Schwartz up there for another half hour. He gives such long answers. I think we didn't even touch on all the things we were hoping to with him. But I did think it was interesting. He didn't seem too keen to let this defense off for their performance in Houston. The company line, which we talked about on the pod yesterday, has kind of been it was a bad day to have a bad day. He talked about going through that film, seeing guys not playing within their role, like trying to maybe go above and beyond a bit too much, and that leads to giving up plays because they're an explosive defense. You can be a little prone to giving up explosive plays. So I thought it was really good to hear him talk about that he was pretty introspective in the work they they've done to get past that. And I do think it's fair. I think I like that explanation better than it was a bad day to have a bad day.
And look, of course, Bubba Ventrone had a ton to say about this new kickoff rule, and I just think the more we talk about it, the more I realize we're not going to know anything about this rule until these guys can get out there and actually play it. I think the preseason is actually going to be fascinating for that very reason, because we'll get to see some full speed reps. And just one of the weird things that stood out to me, remember Dustin Hopkins got hurt on a tackle last year, and I asked him, Bubba, do you have to teach your kickers how to tackle because these guys are standing all alone back there? And he said, yeah, we've got our defensive backs coaches kind of working with these guys to tackle. So there are so many things that this new kickoff rule is going to throw at you that we can't even think of at this point, and that's just, it's going to be fascinating. So we will cover it all at cleveland.com/Browns.